animators and artists, and welcome to another Toon Boom interview. Aidan Neeson is a 2D effects supervisor, while Marty Broski is a lead animator. Together, they work at Lighthouse Studios in Kilkenny. Also, they're married. Today, Marty and Aidan are joining us to talk about FX in 2D animation. Welcome to the stream.
Hey, how are things?
Hey, so thank you so much for joining us today. What do your day-to-day roles look like at Lighthouse Studios?
You want to start?
Yeah, so hi, my name is Marty. I work as a lead animator in Lighthouse.
And I'm Aidan, and I'm a 2D effects supervisor at Lighthouse Studios.
So what does a lead animator do typically in a production?
So in a production, lead animator interacts very directly with their team. So our role would be to make sure that everyone's on style and that everyone's taken care of, that they are technically okay, and if they ever have any questions about their scenes or about the continuity or storyboards or animatics, we're the first point of contact for them before they reach onto supervisor or the animation director.
All right, well, I'm feeling technically okay. Aidan, what does a 2D effects supervisor do?
So my main job is just to oversee the work that the team is doing, and kind of be a bridge between the team and the directors. So kind of interpret what is information I'm receiving, the designs and all the creative aspects of the project, and kind of translate that to the team and what they have to do, and make sure they're getting on okay, and review their work, give them feedback, and help them tackle any issues they have on their work.
And what brought you to your current roles in animation?
So we graduated from college about 2015, and I think work was a little bit scarce at the time, so we kind of had an internship here and there, and did little bits of work, short contracts, and then
I ended up going to Poland for an internship that was supposed to last half a year, and Aidan visited me for a week, and the moment he stepped into the studio, they were like, "Come work with us."
Yeah.
And he stayed, and 6 months turned into 2 years, and we've worked in 2.5 different studios in Poland.
Yeah, it was really nice there.
Yeah, we got a very solid training in Toon Boom because Poland has a very big Toon Boom industry.
Yeah.
So thank you.
So from Poland, how did you get to Kilkenny?
Oh yeah.
So we've worked 2 years. We did some shows, some pilots, a feature film, and after that, it was running up to 2 years of us living in Poland, and we decided it is time to move on. So we've applied to a few studios in Ireland, and by the time, which was Christmas 2016?
No.
18? Sorry. We moved out back into our home in Dublin, in Ireland, and a few months later we started in Lighthouse.
Yeah, well, Marty actually heard back first, so I was waiting a little bit longer to hear back, but during that time we were able to continue freelancing for the studio in Poland. So we kind of created this like seamless transition between jobs, which was amazing.
We also got very lucky because Lighthouse literally set up about 2-3 months before we applied there. Yeah. So the moment we started working there, we entered like the first episode of the first series that they were making. So we could say we've been working there from the start.
Wow, that is fantastic timing. So as a married couple that works at the same studio, do you often collaborate on projects together, or do you try to work on very different projects?
In terms of our day-to-day like jobs, we're always working on the same stuff, the same projects.
There were a few different projects that we were working on at the same time, but nevertheless, we were working in the same room, so it didn't make any difference.
Yeah, but in our personal lives, we sometimes collaborate when we have enough creative energy left after the end of the day. It's it's rare enough though, like that we would have a big project on our personal time that we would work on.
Yeah, work-wise, professionally, we have been consistently working on the same project. Very lucky for us, we're in 2 different departments, so it's not as difficult as it would be for different animation couples, I guess. But when we come back home, I would, for instance, do more illustrations than I would animation, considering that that's what I do every day.
Yeah, it's nice to come back and do something a little bit different to what you do at work.
Added the effects to Marty's animation. Would you like to take our audience through that example now?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, we have the file ready.
So Marty graciously did the 2D effect, or she did the character animation, which is this orange bird that I'm guessing you can see.
Do you have the sketch versions of it?
Yeah, so that's the final product.
Yeah.
And the rough version started off as this collection of drawings. So
because at work I mostly work in cutouts, sometimes in hand-drawn, or a mix of both. A lot of the time I'd like to come back home and just work on a mindless loop that is entirely frame by frame.
Like, I think that's self-contained enough that you don't have to think about this huge, shot direction and characters and script. It's just something small to...
Yeah, it's literally 24 frames of looping animation. You can make it as... Because it doesn't need to be a content that is... that creates a story. It can literally serve the purpose of just being pretty. And that's sometimes... It's okay. Sometimes you just need to do something like that, It doesn't have to be ambitious.
Yeah. So you started off with this rough, and once you felt that the timing was working and the loop was looping, you then went on to clean up?
Yeah, but one thing I didn't want to do is duplicate wings, so I actually did.
Did you actually do 2 separate wings?
Yes.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you can even see it if you go frame by frame on the cleaned up product.
So that's one of them.
But yeah, I just thought it was like such a mundane task to draw every single frame.
Yeah, you could have easily just taken that one wing and flip it around.
Yeah, I wanted it to be organic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can see that they're completely different.
Yeah, you can see there's much bigger gaps in these ones.
Yeah. So it was nice, although I have to say that if I was to redo it now, there are things that change, and that's something that is notorious for animators. We can't look at our finished work.
Better off not looking.
Yeah.
Even if there are elements that you'd want to change, or there are elements that you were really proud of just in this little loop of character animation.
So yeah, one thing I definitely consider changing is the weight of the wings, because I feel like they might be a little bit too big to flop so hard and bend so hard. I think I would make the range slightly smaller and also make the smear on ones. I have no idea what went through my head and I put it on 2s.
Oh, it's on 2s, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
I kind of like I actually really like the smear frames. I find there's a lot of character to them.
It does kind of work because those wings are very heavy. If the smear was on ones, they would feel lighter and more swooshier, because we do like onomatopoeic words. And
swoosh. Yeah, I mean, you have to say the words when you're animating.
Yeah, so it kind of works. That's why I'm not mad at it. But if I was to redo it, it'd look completely different.
Okay, and this character animation was the starting point. So, yes. Aidan, what did you do?
So what happened was I was animating in my office, and Aidan came in and was like, "Oh, this is nice. It would look really good with effects."
Yeah, as soon as I saw it, I was like, "Ooh, there's something for me to work on." So I asked her if I could take it and put some effects on it. And of course, she said yes. She has to.
And that's how we made it.
Yeah, But what I did was I first started to think what I wanted to do with it, like, because you can, like, sometimes online when you're looking through like show reels or people's portfolios, you can see they've, especially in effects animation, they take different elements and they do like a bouncing ball that's on fire, or that's it's made of water. So I kind of went along those same lines in that I wanted to set fire to this bird. And I think that was the first one I did. And it was really, it's actually a great exercise, because I had not done fire very much in my past experience. So this one's actually a little bit hard to see when it's just in the OpenGL view. So I might do a quick render while we chat.
But we were talking earlier, you mentioned that fire tends to be one of the effects that you are a little bit less comfortable with. Are there some reasons why fire animation is particularly difficult?
So for me, I find that fire is a little bit too chaotic to get a grasp on. It's pretty wild and it goes all over the place, so it can be hard to keep track of. But this turned out pretty nice because I kind of borrowed some aspects of other effects, like the way that it breaks up is kind of the way I break up smoke a lot of the time. It breaks up into like long, wispy kind of strands, which you can see around here and then over on this side as well. So I dipped my toes into the fire effect animation and kind of borrowed from other areas that I was more comfortable with. But I do find it difficult a lot of the time. I just need to keep practicing.
Maybe this was easier because you were constrained by the...
Oh, that's rendered absolutely everything altogether.
Ooh.
You need to render the display.
I should try doing that though.
Yeah, altogether
Later.
at the same time.
Later.
Maybe because you were constrained by the character of the snitch verb.
Yeah,
because it is already a pre-made loop and it has some form of physics to it, so
it bounds it a bit.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna throw in a render preview underneath. It's probably easier. And then let it go. But yeah, the bird, like the way that the bird is flapping the wings, kind of informed my decisions for adding in the fire, because the bird is the source of flame, so like the fire is going to trail off of the wings, and as soon as they flap back, they're going to push the fire away. So I'm kind of a little bit constrained to what the bird is doing, but
there's a lot of physics to it.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask. So I know there are a ton of sparks that are coming off of the fire effects. Were these hand drawn or were they particle effects?
They were all hand drawn. I have used the Toon Boom particles before, the particle systems, and I struggle with them a little bit. They're definitely more like mathematically oriented than I'm used to. But so I decided to go with more hand-drawn embers and sparks. If I can find them, it should be here.
How long did this one take you to do?
So I did this over a couple evenings just after work. I think the lightning one was the only one I did in like 2 hours. It was really short, and I definitely spent the least amount of time on that one. But this one was done over a couple of evenings, maybe 2 hours a night after work. So probably 6 hours, maybe 8 hours. But that's it looping there. You can see it's just wisping away down here. But these embers, yeah, every single one that you see is hand drawn. Which I actually find these embers are really easy to do. they're really messy, like little marks that if you just add a glow to them, it just makes it look really nice. So all I would do is just make a little brush stroke. I'll do one in bright green just so you can see it. I'd make a little brush stroke and then go to the next frame and just another one, next frame. And I would start one by one and just track that one ember throughout the loop. And then when that was finished, when it had like dissipated away, I would go back to the start of the loop and just making the next one. And then
You're doing that straight ahead?
Yeah, all straight ahead. And over time, you just build up to all of these different embers that have their own specific arcs and paths. And it's a really simple way of getting a really full-looking particle system without having to tangle with the particle systems.
But it's also really visually pleasing because it looks like it's sizzling.
Yeah, you can really control how it looks. That's why I didn't use the particle systems, is that I find them hard to control and then do exactly what I want. Whereas if I do them by hand, I can be very specific about where they go.
Yeah, one of the things I love about animation is there's so many different ways to achieve the same or similar results. And you can get some really cool, just based on the different approaches, you get very different feels to them too.
Yeah, Toon Boom is great that way, in that you can, there's so many different ways of doing something. And I found that a lot of the people I work with, I would do something a very specific way, and I would choose to do it. I maybe wouldn't do it that way. Maybe do something a little bit more technical. But it offers you so much versatility in terms of what you can do and what you can achieve, because you can be a solely hand-drawn animator in Toon Boom, or you can do something much more technical. Maybe I haven't answered your question. Sorry.
So this is the fire version of this winged ball. What other effects have you applied to this character?
So I guess the next one I'll jump onto is lightning, which is a little bit more simple. Lightning is I would say the best effect to do if you're starting to learn effects animation. Lightning is really forgiving in that you can just make these squiggly shapes one after another, and it'll kind of automatically look like lightning. So that's kind of why this one was so quick to do. In that I'm fairly comfortable with lightning shapes. I haven't done them that often, but being as forgiving as they are, all I needed to do was make some lightning shapes and add a glow, and then it came out something like that. So this was quite quick. I'd probably go back if I have the energy to go back and maybe make it a little bit more elaborate, because it was definitely the one of the four that I spent the least amount of time on.
Do you have any tips for working with glows when you're doing effects animation?
Yes, it can be really easy to overdo the glows. I may have done it myself here. But there's a very fine line between like a tasteful glow and then just a full-blown, just crazy glow. So if you're working with glows, I would say choose a glow that you like and then dial it back a little bit, so that you're not you're just making sure that it's not too much.
Yeah, I also really like that moment where you sort of see that spark that goes between the two wings.
Oh yeah, that's something, because there wasn't too much to play with in terms of the lightning. I think I just decided to have him shooting out lightning in different places.
Like a Tesla.
Yeah.
From the core of the, yeah.
But that by itself was kind of missing something, so I wanted to have its wings, when they get close, start to spark between each other. So you can see how much energy is in this thing. It was really fun to do.
It does very much look, especially with the glows, like those big balls of plasma with one antenna that you sort of touch the edge of the glass, and the bolt of electricity arcs through your finger.
Yeah, I almost, I was going to do a purple glow with that kind of plasma ball in mind, but I kind of just steered away and went with a more classic Pikachu.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very lightning electricity.
Yeah, it's. I would really recommend anyone who wants to learn effects is just to try out some lightning. It's super easy.
Right. So we have lightning, we have fire. What else do we have?
I'm gonna save the best for last. So I'm gonna move on to ice. So here we can see the same technique that was used on the embers. These little particles that are, in this case, rather than flying up, they'd be falling off. Let me just grab my render preview and take that with me. These things are often best viewed in the render view. But yeah, this one is a cold bird. So we have the particles, little frosty snowflakes, I guess, and some other sparkles. And then we have like a heavier kind of cold wind that you can see. And I will play this as soon as it renders.
Yeah. So when we were talking earlier, you mentioned that different types of effects have different sorts of rules they follow. What are the different rules that informed the Firebird versus this Icy Bird?
So I would say that the kind of Icy Bird is leaning more towards like wind and smoke, and the fire actually does take some kind of behavior from smoke as well. I can play this now. So there's an element of smoke to this Ice Bird, but as well as the extra sparkles. But the differences, I guess, would be in the weight. So fire being hot, like naturally hot air rises. So all of the embers and all of the a lot of the wispy shapes in the fire would kind of almost float upwards. Whereas with this Frostbird, a lot of they're much heavier feeling. So I wanted everything to kind of float down to the bottom of the screen. Even if it's being flicked up in the air, it eventually comes back down. So you have a much heavier feeling for the ice.
This one definitely goes swoosh.
Yeah, you can feel the swoosh.
Yeah, it really builds on the momentum of the wings.
Yeah, the wings were the part of the animation that informed the effects the most. I mean, I use those for everything really. They kind of tell you where things are going to go, and I think you can probably see a couple of little frost flakes coming off of the wings. But this one, I think, yeah, this one was a nice one to do. I do enjoy animating smoke. It was difficult to decide what to do for the frost one, but the next one is my favorite.
You can see it's a monster by looking at the node view.
Yeah, you can just looking at the node view, you can tell which one I spent the longest amount of time on. That's this green one. This one was by far my favorite. I played around. It's actually the simplest at the core, but technically most complicated. So I'll just give you a render of one frame. So I went a bit mad with the colors, as you can see. So this would be kind of like a toxic slime kind of goop bird. That would definitely kind of fit more in the realms of magic or liquids, kind of magic liquids, I guess. But it was so much fun to do.
Yeah, so if you're in a video game, you want to avoid that.
Yes, absolutely. I think you can tell by the skull. Let me just render that real quick. And I'll go through the steps for this one because it looks the most complicated, but it's actually probably the simplest in terms of how I started it.
I think you took the longest to play with comping on this.
I did a lot of compositing on this. So I turned the bird, like color-wise, I turned it green and then overlaid it with these gloopy shapes, both purple and green. All of the little highlights, the white ones, they're hand-drawn. But because I'm not going to say lazy, but because I wanted to save time, I didn't want to animate all of these little pink highlights or the blue highlights at the top. Mm-hmm. So what I did was I started out with so this is the base layer of the purple smoke, and it's just a flat drawing of with these gloopy shapes, and I used Toon Boom's lighting systems to create on top of this purple shape a blue light from above and a pink light from below, which can be controlled with these pegs. And the same goes for the kind of green acid. It's this green shape that is kind of lobbing around, doing its acidy things. And on top of that, I have added, I've added a blur, a light at the bottom and a light at the top, which when combined look like this. And like that's a really cool effect in itself. So all of this is generated, so I don't have to draw it ever. And that's what I love about the compositing aspects of Toon Boom. You can do so much.
Yeah, when you're animating with effects and adding compositing effects on top of it, how much do you think about color and lighting?
In this scene, I didn't think too much about color and lighting because it's kind of detached. There's no background. There's no external light. So with this one, I was able to just kind of slap a light on top and bottom because everything looks cooler when it's underlit. But when you're working with maybe on a project or on a scene or someone else's scene, you do have to think a lot about lighting when you're doing effects. Like if your effects designs have highlights on them, then you need to be aware of where the light is coming from so that you can place the highlights in the correct place. This one was lit from above, so pretty much all of the highlights are coming from there.
Yeah, so I first saw this on social media, on Twitter. How do you both approach sharing your animation and finding community online?
Yeah, so we both have social media such as Twitter or Instagram, but a lot of the time we're not really active on it. But our first connection with like the Toon Boom community was through a Facebook group that was set up back in the times we were still working in Poland 5 years ago. It was set up by our mentor, Miko, and it was called Toon Boomers, some of you might know it. And the group itself was about sharing, problem solving, and helping each other out within the software Harmony. And that escalated into larger forum. And we got to know, actually, it's a funny story because we got to know a lot of people that we now currently work with
Yeah, we recognize them from
the
the group.
But yeah, from that we have moved on to Twitter and Discord. So
yeah, but like having those groups has been incredibly helpful. Like to have a place where you can go and submit your work and get some feedback, or even if you're having a problem with Toon Boom, you can just type a post and then 5 minutes later you have someone respond who has the answer to your problem.
Yeah. Or you have 5 different answers to one problem, which is great.
Yeah.
Because there's not one way of doing things in Toon Boom.
There's never just one solution.
Yeah.
But the Discord, the Toon Boom Discord, is probably you get faster responses there. As well, like it's such a great place to go for. It encourages learning and development, and it's a really I can't think of the word, but
the community is really great.
Yes.
The community is great because I have never experienced so many people wanting to share their knowledge and not being secretive about their ways of animating or their ways of rigging or the ways of compositing. There's so many tutorials on YouTube.
Yeah.
There's so many step-by-steps on Twitter or on Twitch. I assume I don't have Twitch.
It's a really inclusive community, and I think we're both very happy to be part of it.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot that I have learned through just random strangers on the internet, like just straight up DMing people or asking them, how did you do this, or how did you do that, and just people are incredible, sharing their knowledge.
Yeah. Before we were talking about scenes in animation where we sort of look at the TV and wonder, how did they do that? And now you can actually ask them, which is definitely an experience.
Yep.
Speaking of, Aidan, how does character animation influences the choices that you make with 2D effects?
A lot of the time, character animation and effects animation are kind of not combined, but they're very closely related in that the character animation, as we discussed here, it kind of informs what I would do as an effects animator. So depending on the scene, you might have a scene where the effects are almost tied to the character or like on the character themselves. So you would work very closely with the character animation. And I think in cases like that, it would be it's good for the effects artist and the character animator to be in contact. It's not always necessary, but if there's any issues with the or any questions about the acting or questions about the effects, vice versa, it's great to get into contact with each other. But other times when the effects are a little bit more detached, like if there's no character in the scene and there's like an explosion in the distance, that's kind of really where you can go a little bit more crazy.
Yeah.
Where you're not.
And I also want to ask Marty, so from the other side, what do you need to keep in mind when you know that effects will be applied to your character animation?
So if you will have effects applied to character animation, a lot of that is already indicated in the storyboards or in the animatics, so you already have an idea of what it's going to look like. But if the character is directly interacting with the effects, you need to, as a character animator, make space for those effects. So what we would do in a lot of cases, just put a placeholder in the scene for the given effect. So this way the character can actually interact with something. So there's weight to it, there is, the secondary action or effects, or not effects, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have an idea, we have an understanding of how it's going to look like, which also makes it a lot easier for the effects animator to go in later, because they know where the animator has placed the effect to be in the future.
I think it's really good for the character animator to get in a little bit of the mindset of what the effects artist might be doing, because a lot of times you can get you can be animating your scene and not thinking about anyone else, and having that placeholder is a really great way of just kind of dipping your toes into the next department and finding out And it can help improve the acting as well. So say if you've got a splash,
Absolutely.
you can put down some temp or placeholder timing, and just the character stamps down on the splash, and then you have this placeholder splash in place that the animator can use as acting reference.
Yeah, because character animators also need to react to the effects as well. So
Yeah.
And in the pipeline, character animation is always first.
Yeah.
So we do kind of have to look forward.
Yeah.
In that way, look into the future.
Planning is important.
Yeah, planning and communication is so important in the studio.
Yeah.
For people outside of studios, what are some misconceptions that audiences may have about animated effects?
I would think that the biggest misconception is time, about how much time it actually takes to do effects. Whether it is hand-drawn effects or more generated effects, it still takes time and energy. I find that effects can often be, as a department, underestimated, or like people don't really think too much about the amount of effects required for a project. So a kind of direct result of that is the effects department often being understaffed. And I found in my previous experience, I'm often working alone as effects artist. So it was only until I got to Lighthouse that I had a team. I had other effects artists on the same project, which was really, really nice. But it's often overlooked how much work actually goes into the effects, and I think that's a shame, because effects is really fun.
It's the cherry on top.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you imagine anime without effects?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd love to see like an animated clip with the effects taken out, and just see how well it works.
Without any dust clouds or sparks or fire or water.
Would be a little bit less impactful.
It is something that ties everything together.
Yeah, like it's not like every department is important, and it's the combined effort that makes animation amazing. But it's definitely, I think it's maybe doesn't have the focus that it should have.
What are some things that make effects challenging or more labor intensive than people might not expect?
Design. A lot of the time you can get designs that work really nicely as a single image, but when you try to get them moving or try to animate them, the way they're designed might not be conducive to movement. Like it might not move so well. So design can be both a hindrance and a help, I guess. I don't know, do you have any input on this one?
If you have to stick to storyboards very strictly,
yeah,
that can be very limiting.
Storyboards is another thing in that what might work in a storyboard might not work so well for it might be really difficult. It might seem really simple in the storyboard, but when you get down to animating it, it's like, where do I even begin?
When you have the layout, when you have the character animation, and when you have to follow the timing of the storyboard, it just does not work.
Yeah.
So something that makes sense for an idea that you can sort of linger on for a few seconds might not work when you're breaking it into frames.
Yeah. It's really all about planning, I guess. Like even just thinking about the logistics of a scene, it's worth taking a little bit of time to think a few steps down the pipeline.
Yeah. Well, on that note, how much leeway do you typically have to determine the scope of effects, and how much input do you have?
That would vary greatly depending on the project. So the type of project. If you're working on a feature film, you might have a lot more creative input and a lot more time to explore the different avenues of effects, or even any other department. But I'd say for working on a TV show or a TV schedule, it's you have much less freedom to explore and kind of go wild with the effects. It's purely down to time though, because like the schedules are pretty intense.
Turnaround is crazy fast on
Yeah.
TV shows.
So yeah, so you don't have a lot of time to figure out what you're going to be doing. So in that sense, I really enjoy the rough effects animation stage. I think that's where all the decisions, well, not all the decisions, but a lot of decisions about creative direction can be made. You can rough out an effect scene in a couple of minutes, and then you've got your keys, you've got your timing. If it's not working, you scrap it and start again. And another couple of minutes, you've got something completely different.
When would you want to add like really elaborate effects, like really elaborate explosions or dazzling lightning and very convincing water effects, or instead when would you want to pull back and be a little bit more subtle?
All the time. Just want to add explosions everywhere. But in seriousness, you really have to be aware of the project as a whole or the scene as a whole. So like if you're working in a really emotional kind of subtle acting scene, you don't want to be putting big explosions in the background. It's just gonna distract and it's gonna look out of place. So being aware of what's kind of applicable for the scene you're in is really important. And then when you're in kind of the higher pace shots, where say maybe there's a chase scene, you can go a little bit more free in those kind of those areas.
A lot of this is mapped out already in the storyboarding stage, where the storyboard artist goes in and the script does that, but in the storyboards is where they really put in that money shot. That's what it's called. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's usually a sequence that is going to be like the main sequence of the episode, and this is where special care and special love goes into.
So luckily, most of the time we already know what we're supposed to do, but it's nice to be able to put a little bit extra into the scene you're working on, really kind of make it your own.
I saw a question in the chat, and we touched on this a little bit, but do you have a favorite type of effects to do?
Definitely anything that's magical. But in realistic effects, I would say water would be my favorite effect to do, because it's really logical in how it behaves. Like it has to adhere to gravity, and you've got the surface tension connecting the like droplets. But the most fun I have in effects is working on magic and anything magical. You can go a little bit crazy with the colors and the shapes. It's really fun.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that water has like really firm rules that it follows. I know some really technical animators who like absolutely pull their hair out when they are told they need to do water effects. How do you wrap your mind around it?
Reference would be the starting point. Just watch a lot of videos about, so say you've got like a water splash to do. You could even record it yourself of just dropping a stone into water.
I'm just laughing because every now and then when we go on holidays, I can just see something. It's like, wait, he pulls out his phone and he puts stop mo on and records the puddle splash or something. Yeah. It's notorious.
It must look really strange. But yeah, record reference and just look at reference on YouTube and go frame by frame on YouTube. I especially really love those slow motion videos where you can see like 20,000 frames per second or something. It's
particles exploding and stuff.
But yeah,
that's a little pumpkin in slow motion.
Exactly.
Yes.
Actually, I have to try that.
Yeah, for Halloween.
So we have about 15 minutes left, and there's some really good questions that popped up in the chat. So I'm just going to go through them really quickly. Do effects artists specialize in any kinds of effects like shadows or particles, or does usually everybody do everything?
I think everybody has kind of like a natural, like everybody's good at something specific. I find that with the people I work with, there's like everybody's good at, like, this person's really good at that effect and this person's really good at that effect. So everyone kind of specializes in what they're good at. But it kind of depends on your experience. Like I'm not so good at fire. I'm much more comfortable with like liquid-based effects. So that would be my strength, I guess.
Yeah. Next question is, how much freedom does an animator have in a scene compared to what the director or clients say they need?
Yeah, so it depends from project to project, really. Usually, animatics have very strong keys, and yeah, usually that's it. We get keys in the animatics, so a lot of our freedom comes with the timing, the breakdowns, the in-betweening. That's where we get to do some
maybe the
magic.
most subtle stuff.
The most subtle stuff, a lot of acting and stuff, and I think like animators get to convey that the most, like through roughing out, and then when the supervisors see our roughs, and then they get to confirm if we could go this certain direction with our acting, with how we want to push this scene. So yeah, roughing is super important in both effects and animation.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of animators say that the breakdowns are also a place where animators have a lot of influence on how something turns out.
Yeah, absolutely. But everything depends on the series, so everything depends on the character you're animating. There are certain things you can do with certain characters because you do want to keep their personalities. So some of the TV series will allow for a more slapstick comedy, so characters can like really stretch in a certain way and then like really squish, and you can convey all of that through breakdowns or in-betweens. So
so we've been talking about 2D effects for animation. One of the questions in the chat is, do you have any advice or experience about combining and comping 2D effects on top of 3D or live action?
I've actually tried this myself. It's quite difficult to do 2D effects on top of maybe some 3D animation or live action, depending on the frame rate, because a lot of, like, say, video games or 3D renders, they're done at higher frame rates, so you have to animate more in betweens. So it can be difficult. I would advise trying to strip back some of the frames in your
footage.
So maybe put your footage on a lower frame rate or record at a lower frame rate if you know you're going to be animating on top of it. But it is a really fun experience to do, because I'm not good at character animation, so I often like lift footage from games and like animate effects on top of it. But yeah, I would say just try it.
Yeah. One of the cool things too is when you know to look for it, a lot of effects in 3D animation and in video games are often 2D effects.
Yeah.
That's a very nice effect.
Yeah, I really like the combination of 2D effects and 3D characters. I don't know what it is.
It makes the 3D look more organic.
It does. Sometimes 3D can look a little, I don't know, not stiff, but a little too digital. I don't know if you can say that.
It's hard to gritty it up a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't have the weight, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what the weight and timing.
Yeah, there's something very specific about 2D effects, that they have very like almost cartoony timing. It can like contrast nicely against the 3D animation.
What should aspiring 2D effects animators have in their portfolios?
Technical stuff and yeah.
Like, what do you mean technical stuff?
Like walk cycles, run cycles, maybe a loop or two.
Was this for 2D?
Yeah,
was
is
for
it for
effects or
character?
Well, I actually like having both answers. So as a character animator, you would suggest having very technical things so people know that you are very proficient at that type of animation. As a effects animator, what are your sort of equivalents to the walk cycle or to a turnaround?
But actually, I'm sorry, not just technical. You need to have a variety
Yeah.
because you need to have acting as well.
Acting.
But a lot of people, a lot of showreels that I see are very strictly acting, and we don't see the technical stuff.
So yeah, do have a mix
You
of
do need to have
stuff.
a mix. Yeah.
Maybe have like some lip sync pieces in there, maybe one or two, and then some more technical animation. But
Sorry.
for effects, I would recommend a variety of elements. So like you saw with these birds here, like it's the same character animation with different types of effects on top of it. So I would definitely recommend trying out or including different elements. So fire, water, smoke, because you don't want to have just a reel full of fire or full of water, because most of the time a project is going to need more than one type of effect. So having a variety is going to really help getting the job. But one thing to be careful of is style. I think it's more important to focus on the animation and the feeling of an effect rather than the look of an effect, because oftentimes you can have these really beautiful effects that are stylized, and if they don't move like the element that they're portraying, it doesn't really work.
So the mechanics have to be right first.
Yeah, really solid mechanics.
So we're almost out of time. Where can our audience find more of your work online?
So we both have Instagram and Twitter.
Yeah, Twitter is definitely more animation oriented.
Yeah, so you can find me at Maze of Pines everywhere on like Instagram, Twitter.
Yeah, and you can find me as Marty on Instagram and Twitter.
Yeah, you also mentioned that Lighthouse had an announcement for us.
Oh yes, so Lighthouse Studios is hiring. So I think you're gonna link
their career path.
Yeah, the website. So there's a couple of job listings on the website that you guys should check out.
Yeah.
We're hiring for some interesting things.
There are a lot of projects in Lighthouse, and we're looking for Toon Boom stuff.
Yeah.
Toon Boom stuff. Yeah. For both animation, effects, rigging, comp. I don't know. I'm naming things.
Yeah, all of the job listings are on the website. So
yes.
Please do check that out.
Oh, that's awesome to hear. Okay, so thank you everyone for joining us today. If you enjoyed today's conversation and would like to try your hand at animating and compositing 2D effects, you can download a 21-day free trial of Toon Boom Harmony from our website. That is toonboom.com. And until next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.